Final Cut Studio Training DVD. In this DVD, we'll take you through the process of creating a complete DVD product using Apple's Final Cut Studio. In doing so, you'll learn just how well all four of the Studio applications integrate. We'll start by editing a movie trailer together in Final Cut Pro. We'll then enhance the graphics for the trailer using Motion. We'll clean up the audio using Soundtrack Pro. And finally, we'll author the entire project to DVD using DVD Studio Pro. We'll be creating a promotional DVD for Jack McCoy's surfing film, Blue Horizon. The idea is to create a DVD that gives people a taste of what the movie offers and provide a web link to actually purchase the DVD. Before we get started, let's take a look at some of the features of this training DVD. The DVD is broken down into 4 tutorial sections, one for each of the applications in Final Cut Studio. It can be played in a regular standalone DVD player or on your Macintosh computer. So if you have a set-top DVD player nearby, you may find it more convenient to watch this DVD in the player while following the tutorials on your computer. To access the tutorials, simply select the application you wish to work with from the main menu. While each tutorial stands by itself as a complete lesson, it's recommended that you follow them sequentially to gain the best understanding of Final Cut Studio's workflow. Before you start working through the DVD, you'll need to copy the project media onto your hard drive. In the Finder, double-click the FCS Training DVD icon to open the DVD. Drag the Final Cut Studio folder from the main window and drop it onto your Macintosh hard drive for easy access during the tutorials. Note: the current version of the tutorials only ships with the NTSC media, so you can disregard all references to PAL. Once you're done with these lessons, you may want to go a little deeper into the Final Cut Studio software. If so, take a look at the Apple Pro Training Series section of this DVD for more information about Apple Pro training resources and certification courses. In this tutorial, we'll be creating a short trailer for Jack McCoy's new surfing film, Blue Horizon. Before we get started creating the piece, let's set up the interface for our project and take a look at some of the new features in Final Cut Pro version 5. Once you've installed Final Cut Pro 5 on your system, open your Applications folder and drag its icon to the dock, usually located at the base of the screen. Repeat this process for the other Final Cut Studio applications. It's a good idea to set your dock to auto-hide when working with any of the Pro applications, as this gives you a little more screen real estate inside the interface. Now, go ahead and launch Final Cut Pro. For this tutorial, we won't be working with one of the common presets, so check Show All. Choose the DV NTSC Anamorphic preset. If you're working with the PAL version of the tutorial, choose DV PAL Anamorphic. Anamorphic footage is widescreen footage that's been squeezed horizontally to fit into a standard 4:3 video aspect ratio. By choosing this preset, Final Cut Pro will stretch the footage back to 16:9 widescreen for previewing while we edit. Next, choose a location for the scratch disk. This is where temporary video files such as renders will be stored. If you have a fast, dedicated hard drive for this purpose, choose it here. Otherwise, continue to use your primary hard drive for these tutorials. After choosing the setup preset, you may see a second pop-up window alerting you that Final Cut Pro has been unable to locate your FireWire device. It's not necessary to have a FireWire preview device set up for this tutorial, so you can simply ignore this message and click Continue. Let's begin with a tour of the interface. The interface comprises four main windows. The first is the browser, which provides access to all the elements of your project, including video, audio, and edited sequences. You can separate your content into bins, the editing term for folders, and create separate tabs for each bin. Thumbnails of your video can be quickly adjusted to better represent the entire clip, and a final tab allows you to browse the various available filters and transitions. The second main interface window is the viewer. The viewer allows you to preview individual clips and to set their in and out points simply by pressing the hotkeys I and O on the keyboard. It also provides shuttle and jog controls for quick, accurate positioning of the playhead. These can also work in conjunction with third-party jog shuttle hardware devices. The third window is the canvas. Where the viewer allows you to preview a specific clip, the canvas previews the entire edited sequence you've created. From the canvas, you can quickly access any section of your sequence for playback. The canvas is also where you can perform edits using an overlay drag and drop menu, which offers 7 different edit types, including automatic insertion of a favorite transition effect, such as a crossfade. Rounding out the interface is the timeline. The timeline is where you assemble your various video clips, audio, and graphics to create a final edited sequence. The canvas is essentially a display for what's going on in the timeline. Consequently, the playheads in both windows are synchronized. To the right of the timeline is the tool palette, which contains the various tools used for editing and tweaking your sequence in the timeline. Several buttons in the tool palette contain multiple items, accessed by clicking the button and pausing with the mouse held down. We'll take a closer look at each of these interface elements in turn as we begin to construct the Blue Horizon trailer. Final Cut Pro 5 improves upon earlier versions with many powerful new features. The most notable of these is support for multi-camera editing. Multi-camera editing, or multicam, is used when a scene or event is captured by several different cameras simultaneously. By using Final Cut Pro's multicam editing system, editors can quickly cut between the different camera angles for the best dramatic effect. Final Cut Pro has a unique and powerful implementation of multicam. Each set of camera angles are grouped into a single master clip called a multi-clip. Multi-clips can have up to 128 angles incorporated into them. Final Cut Pro version 5 automates the process of creating multi-clips, naming the angles intelligently based on the original clip or reel names. Clips can be synchronized by timecode or their in and out points. Clips with slip timecode can be quickly adjusted with the timecode offset control. Final Cut Pro 5 can quickly switch between different angles during playback. You can even generate a cut during the switch. The contents of a multi-clip can be simultaneously viewed in a 1-up, 4-up, 9-up, or 16-up format in the viewer. Effects can be applied to each angle individually and copied and pasted between different angles. You can also quickly collapse and uncollapse a clip to a single camera angle. Another change in Final Cut Pro 5 is improvement to the algorithms used for scaling and motion transformations. The Motion Filtering Quality pop-up menu gives you access to 3 quality settings: fastest, normal, and best. Fastest being equivalent to the quality of previous versions of Final Cut Pro. Set this to best for high-quality export. Final Cut Pro's real-time playback engine, RT Extreme, has also received major enhancements. Final Cut Pro will now dynamically throttle video quality, frame rate, or both to maintain a consistent preview quality when working with complex filters and transitions. Alternatively, advanced users can manually set video quality and frame rate during preview in order to increase the number of simultaneous real-time effects. These are just a few of the enhancements found in Final Cut Pro 5. Other new features include native support for HDV, IMX, and 1080i50 DVC Pro HD, multi-channel audio capture, MIDI control surface support, XSAM workgroup editing, and an integrated film production database.
Now let's get started creating the trailer. We'll begin by importing the media from the hard drive into project folders, referred to as bins. Once our project's all set up, we'll lay down the music bed and begin to edit the sequence together. If you haven't already done so, start a new project using either DVNTC Anamorphic or DVPAL Anamorphic, depending on which part of the world you're in. If you're working through the PAL version of the tutorial, some of the screenshots will display NTSC timecode. That's okay, we'll provide you with the PAL timecode values where necessary. You'll notice that Final Cut Pro has automatically created a sequence ready to edit. A single project can contain several different sequences. These could be different versions of the same thing, such as 15, 30, and 60-second cuts of a TV commercial. Or they could be completely separate stories that share a common pool of footage. For this exercise, we'll just be creating a single sequence. Final Cut Pro offers several different window layouts, depending on the task at hand. If you accidentally move windows around and are having a hard time following the tutorial, just go to the window menu and choose Arrange, Standard. Your screen layout should then match the one used in these tutorials. Before you start editing, you need to save your project and give it a name. Choose File, Save Project As, navigate to the Final Cut Studio Training folder, then click into Edit, Projects. Give your project the name Blue Horizon Trailer and click Save. It's now time to import our media. Before we do, let's create two bins in our project folder, one for audio and one for video. To do so, simply Control-click or right-click if you're using a 2-button mouse in the browser and choose New Bin from the pop-up menu. Rename the bin Video. In the same way, create a second bin called Audio. You can continue to view these bins inside the main project tab, or you can give them their own tabs. To do this, simply double-click a bin, which opens it into a separate floating window. Then drag the tab at the top of this new window and drop it back into the main browser window when you see a black highlight on the window's border. Go ahead and do this for both the audio and video bins. If you're not already there, click the Video tab to bring it to the front. We'll now import the video clips we want to work with. From the File menu, choose Import, Files, or press Command-I on the keyboard. Navigate to the Final Cut Studio Training folder, Edit, Video. Click on the first video clip in the list to select it, then scroll down to the bottom of the folder's contents and shift-click the last clip in the list, selecting all clips in between. Click Choose to complete the import. Click over to the Audio tab now and choose Import, Files again. Click into the Audio folder and select Into the Blue.aif, the only audio we'll need to begin the edit. To begin, simply drag Into the Blue.aif from the browser into the A1 and A2 tracks of the timeline and release the mouse when the front of its timing bar is flush with the first frame in our sequence, called Sequence 1. You'll notice that the playhead jumped to the very end of the audio in the timeline, right around 1 minute and 10 seconds. To navigate back to the start of the sequence, click back into the timeline window to make sure it's active, then press the Home key on the keyboard to jump back to frame 1. This is function left arrow on laptop keyboards. There are several other ways to navigate around the timeline. One of the easiest is to use the scroll bar at the base of the timeline. Simply click and drag it left and right to shuffle up and down the timeline. You can also change the zoom level of the timeline by grabbing handles on either end of the scroll bar and resizing it. Additionally, a slider to the left of the scroll bar can be adjusted for quick zooming. Once you're done experimenting, scroll back to frame 1 of the sequence. We'll start the trailer by introducing the two surfers featured in the film. Click back to the Video tab. Right now, all we have is a list of the video file names, which isn't all that helpful for doing quick searches. Let's add thumbnails to the view to help sort through the clips. Control-click or right-click on the column headers to the right of the name column. From the pop-up menu, choose Show Thumbnails. You can adjust each thumbnail to a more representative poster frame simply by clicking and dragging left and right over the thumbnail. When you find a frame you like, hold down the Control key, then release the mouse. The thumbnail is now updated to the newly chosen frame. The video clips are all still selected from importing them together. Just click near one of the clip labels to cancel the selection. Locate the clip raster face and drag it into the viewer window. First, we need to set in and out points for the clip. When working with longer clips, such as an entire offline reel, you'd use the jog and shuttle controls to navigate around quickly and precisely. Because the clips we're working with are relatively short, scrubbing the small timeline at the base of the viewer will work fine. We want to give raster as much face time as possible, so let's trim the endpoint. Drag the playhead until his fingertips are just below the screen. Press the I key on the keyboard to set the endpoint of the clip. We'll cut to the timing of the music, so let's leave the out point at the end of the clip for now. Go ahead and drag the clip from the viewer to the timeline and snap it to the first frame of the V1 track once your mouse pointer becomes a downward-facing arrow. Be careful not to drag it above the V1 track, or you'll create a second track in the process. Click in the timeline window to make it active. Press the home key to move back to frame 1, then the spacebar to begin playback. You'll see the footage playing back in the canvas at the far right. Notice that the playhead in the timeline and the playhead in the canvas are synchronized, since the canvas is simply displaying the video present in the timeline at the position of the playhead. You can press spacebar to pause, then scrub over the ruler at the top of the timeline to move forwards and backwards. We want the video to fade up from black, so we'll add a transition to do so. Make sure your playhead is parked at the start of the sequence, and from the Effects menu, choose Video Transitions, then the Dissolve submenu. Notice that most of the effects are listed in bold. Bold type indicates that a filter or effect can be performed in real time without needing to render. Choose the Fade In, Fade Out Dissolve. The transition gets added to the start of the sequence, right where we position the playhead. When you press the spacebar to resume playback, you'll notice that the image in the canvas seems to stay black too long before fading up on our clip. That's because the Fade In, Fade Out Dissolve is designed to work with two clips, the first fading out before the other fades in. In our case, we only have the one clip, so we need to adjust the transition. Simply double-click on the transition in the timeline and its parameters load into the viewer. Drag the threshold slider down from 50 to 0. Click back into the timeline, press the home key to move back to frame 1, and then press the spacebar to begin playback. Now the transition starts from the very beginning and we have a nice, smooth fade. We want a music-driven edit, so we'll time the switch to the next clip right with the first repeat of the bass line in the music bed. As you've no doubt already noticed, clicking and dragging across the timeline's ruler provides a brief sampling of the audio at the playhead's current frame. This is known as scrubbing. While this is helpful when detecting the start of clean audio, like dialogue, it tends to have limited usefulness in a complex music bed. Instead, we'll simply press the spacebar to pause playback right when the bass line begins to repeat. If you're finding it hard to correctly time the exact moment the bass line repeats, drag the playhead until the timecode in the upper left corner of the timeline reads 01000526. If you're working with the PAL version of the tutorial, go to 01000522. It's now time to trim our clip to this new out point. We'll do this using the razor blade tool. From the tool palette to the right of the screen, select the razor blade tool by clicking on its button, or press the B key on the keyboard. Move your mouse over the clip where the playhead is currently positioned. Notice how the vertical razor line jumps magnetically to the playhead position. That's because by default, snapping is turned on, a feature that makes frame-accurate editing extremely simple. With the razor blade tool over the playhead, click the mouse and the clip is cut in two. Change back to the selection tool by clicking its icon in the tool palette or by pressing the A key on the keyboard. Select the tail part of the clip to the right of where we just sliced and press the delete key to remove it. We now have a new precise out point for our clip. Back in the browser, double-click on Andy Face to bring the clip into the viewer for editing. Again, we need to give our star plenty of face time, so drag the playhead until a few frames before the chin appears in frame. Press the I key to set an endpoint. This time, we'll perform a drag and drop edit. Make sure the playhead is still positioned at the end of the raster face clip in the timeline. Drag the Andy Face clip from the viewer into the canvas window, but be careful not to release the mouse. A pop-up menu of edit options appears. We need to perform an overwrite edit in this case. Had there been any video already in the timeline at the position of the playhead, it would have been replaced or overwritten during this edit. We'll also add a transition to the edit, so choose the Overwrite with Transition option. Moving back to the start of the timeline, we can watch our edit, complete with dissolve, play back in real time. A dissolve tends to be the most commonly used transition, and so is the one performed when we chose Overwrite with Transition. It's also possible to change the default transition if you find yourself constantly using a specific type for the project at hand. Unfortunately, the dissolve doesn't really match the fade up from black at the beginning of the sequence, so let's change it to another fade in, fade out transition. Click on the cross dissolve in the timeline to select it. From the Effects tab, choose Video Transitions, Dissolve, Fade in, Fade out. The cross dissolve is replaced, and we now have a transition that pairs nicely with the mood of the music and the initial fade up. A very popular editing technique in recent years is ramping, the variation of a clip's playback speed for dramatic effect. Before we apply this effect, we need to adjust the out point of the Andy Face clip in the timeline. We'll do this by jumping to a specific frame. Click once on the timecode entry box in the top left corner of the timeline. Type 927 if you're working with the NTSC version of the project and press Return. If you're working with PAL, type 923 and press Return. There's no need to type in colons or semicolons. Final Cut Pro will do that for you. Now click and drag the right edge of the Andy Face clip to the left. It snaps to the position of the playhead and our out point is set. Before we create the ramping effect, we'll set up a couple of markers to help us position the timing events. Click in the gray space above the video track to make sure no clips in the timeline are selected. As you did a few moments ago, click into the timecode entry box. Type 1110 to move to frame 1110 if you're working with the NTSC version of the footage. For PAL, type 1108, move to frame 1108. Press the M key on the keyboard. A small marker icon appears in the timeline's ruler at the position of the playhead. Back in the timecode entry box, type 1123 for NTSC or 1119 for PAL, and then press the M key to create another marker. Markers, when combined with the snapping feature, provide a great way to easily position edits and other events in the timeline. Next, locate Undersurfer in the browser and drag it into the viewer. This is the clip we're going to ramp. We want to keep as much of it as possible available for retiming, but we need to create what's called a handle so that there are frames available to a transition added at the start of the clip. Move the playhead until the timecode box in the top right corner of the viewer reads 15. Press I to set the endpoint. Click back on the timeline and press the up arrow key on the keyboard to jump to the out point of the Andy Face clip. The up and down arrow keys are a great shortcut for jumping between edit points in a sequence. Drag Undersurfer from the viewer into the canvas and choose Overwrite. No transition this time. The clip is now ready to be retimed. To do so, we need a little more information in our timeline. In the lower left corner of the timeline, click on the Toggle Clip Keyframes button to activate keyframe viewing. In the tool palette, click and hold the mouse down over the slip tool and select the small clock icon, the Time Remap tool. Alternately, you can press the S key 3 times. Hover your mouse over the Undersurfer clip in the timeline and let the pointer snap to the first of the 2 markers you created earlier. click down to add a timing keyframe. Ignore the other marker for now. You'll notice small vertical lines at the base of the V1 track that showed up when we activated the Toggle Clip Keyframes button. Click down again on the clip, this time keeping the mouse button depressed. As you do so, you'll see a tooltip pop up with two percentages, one for the new speed of the clip to the left of our keyframe and the other for the speed to the right. When the speed to the left reads around 70%, release the mouse. If you play back the clip now, you may notice a speed change, but it's very subtle. We want a more dramatic effect, and we'll do it by taking advantage of the extra frames at the tail end of the clip. If you look carefully at the out point of the clip, there's another timing keyframe that was automatically created for us. Mouse over the keyframe at the out point, and when your mouse pointer becomes a crosshair, click and drag the keyframe until it snaps to the second of the two markers we created. Now all the frames that were to the right of our original timing keyframe are bunched together to create an extremely fast playback. After the second marker, the footage now freezes. That's okay, we'll be overriding that with another clip in a moment. To finish working with Undersurfer, add another fade-in, fade-out transition to the front of the clip.
Click back to the selection tool in the tool palette or press the A key. Snap the playhead to the second marker, which will be our new edit point. Locate the clip raster heading to camera in the browser and drag it into the viewer. Move the playhead about 2 seconds in, as indicated by the timecode box in the upper right corner of the viewer, and press the I key to set an endpoint. Drag the clip into the canvas and choose Overwrite. The new clip overwrites the unwanted extra section of our retimed clip.
In the interest of time, we'll jump ahead to a saved version of the sequence, but you're more than welcome to try completing the additional edits in the final trailer using the techniques covered so far and comparing with the final version. In this exercise, we'll use one of Final Cut Pro's most important color correctors, the Real-Time Color Corrector 3-Way, to make adjustments to one of the clips in our sequence.
From the File menu, choose Close Project to close any existing project you may have open. Then choose File, Open, and navigate to Final Cut Studio Training, Edit, Projects, and choose Color Correction.fcp, ignoring Color Corrected, a separate project.
In the timeline, scroll to the end of the sequence, then double-click on the second last clip called Reverse Wave. This will load it into the viewer, ready to be edited. Now this clip is a nice image of a rolling underwater wave, but it lacks the intensity of color or saturation that most of the other clips in our sequence have. We'll apply a color corrector to shift the color closer to what we're looking for. We could do our color correction in the current setup, but Final Cut Pro includes a handy preset layout for color correction, and we'll use that instead. Choose Window, Arrange, Color Correction. You'll see the viewers have now been rearranged to allow for a bank of video scopes, including a waveform and vector scope, essential tools when working with the limited color space of broadcast video. You should still have the reverse wave clip loaded into the viewer to edit. If not, double-click it again in the timeline. Choose Effects, Video Filters, Color Corrector 3-Way. Once you do, you should see a new tab added to the viewer labeled Color Corrector 3-Way. Most filters are simply accessed in the Filters tab, but certain special filters like the Color Corrector 3-Way have their own dedicated control tabs. Click over to the Color Corrector 3-Way tab to examine its controls. Now, we want to be able to see the changes we're making to the clip, so move the playhead and the timeline ruler over the area of our reverse wave clip to make it visible in the canvas. The Color Corrector 3-Way allows you to make hue, saturation, and value changes to the dark, mid-range, and bright pixels in your image, using 3 intuitive banks of controls. In this case, we just want to make changes to the mid-level pixels. shifting the color to a deeper aqua. Click and drag the small round knob in the middle of the MIDS control circle and drag it down and to the right, toward the cyan and blue side of the circle. Pay attention to the vector scope while you do to make sure it doesn't move beyond legal values for cyan or blue. You'll see that with just a slight change, we've created a rich aqua coloration to the wave, much more in fitting with the other clips in the sequence. Looking at the vector scope, the color is still clearly within legal values. While we're at it, we can use the waveform monitor to take advantage of the full contrast range of the image, expanding the whites up to 100% legal. You can do this simply by dragging the slider below the whites corrector circle to the right. We'll leave the black levels where they are. Even though they're above 0% black, there are no true blacks in the shot, so lowering the black level would produce an unnaturally high contrast in the shot. Simply by toggling the checkbox at the top of the Color tab, we can see the dramatic effect that's been performed on the clip. Because this is a real-time effect, we can play back the timeline and instantly see the results. At this point, the basic sequence has been assembled. From the File menu, choose Save Project As, give your project a name, and save it to Final Cut Studio Training, Edit, Projects. In the first section of the DVD, we cut together a trailer for Jack McCoy's Blue Horizon. We'll now use Motion 2 to add graphical elements to that trailer. When you first launch Motion, you'll be greeted by the welcome screen. The tours and tutorials featured in this list are a great way to get a better grounding in the application. For now, though, let's load in a template so that we have something to work with as we tour the interface. Click the Start with Template button. The Templates menu gives you instant access to a number of high-quality pre-made motion graphics backgrounds, which can be quickly customized with simple drag-and-drop operations. In the Collections pane, scroll down and click on the Light collection. Click once on the Light Open template in the main pane. You'll see a preview of the template in the far right pane of the template browser. This gives you an idea of how the template will look. Double-click the Light Open template to launch it. The Motion interface comprises 4 main sections. When you first launch the application, 2 are visible: the main canvas window and the smaller utility window to its left. The utility window includes 3 main subtabs. The first, the file browser, gives you quick access to the contents of your hard drive. It's where you go to import footage into your project. The top pane of the window gives you access to common locations on your hard drive, while the lower pane shows you the contents of the current folder. You can quickly navigate to other folders using the forward and back buttons and the path button just above the top pane. A preview window at the top of the utility window shows a thumbnail of any clips you select in the lower pane. The second tab in the utility window is the library. The library gives you fast access to all the building blocks of Motion, from Motion's unique behaviors and real-time filters to particle presets and text effects. New to Motion 2 is the ability to quickly access iPhoto and iTunes content directly from the library, including specific playlists and photo albums. The final tab of the utility window is the inspector. Once you begin working with project elements, all the parameters for fine-tuning how those elements look and move can be accessed here. There are 2 additional important sections to the Motion interface we haven't yet visited. These are the Project pane and the Timing pane, and by default they're hidden from view. By pressing the Project button at the top of the canvas, you can open the Project pane. An easier way to access this is by pressing the Function key F5 at the top of your keyboard.
This will toggle the project pane open and closed. If you're working from a laptop, you'll need to hold down the Function key at the lower left of your keyboard before pressing the F5 key.
The most important part of the project pane is the Layers tab, which provides a way to select project elements, organize them into groups called layers, and enable and disable them as necessary. The project pane also includes a Media tab to access the properties of individual media files and an Audio tab for adjusting and organizing sound files used in the project. Since we currently have no audio in the project, this tab is empty.
The final section of the Motion interface is the Timing pane, accessed by pressing the Timing button at the top of the canvas window or by simply pressing the F6 key.
The Timing pane includes the timeline, similar to the timeline found in Final Cut Pro, the keyframe editor, used to tweak the shape of keyframe curves, and the audio editor, useful for editing individual audio waveforms. If you're working with a small desktop size, you may want to choose the Fit in Window mode from the Scale pop-up list at the top of the canvas. This forces the canvas to resize so that its entire image is visible, regardless of which panes are open.
Motion 2 includes many new features and enhancements. Let's take a look at some of the most significant ones. First of all, Motion 2 supports a float architecture. Note, float space is only available when working with Mac OS X 10.4 Tiger.
What this means is that images with a high dynamic range of brightness values can be manipulated inside of Motion without clipping of highlights or shadows. This is especially important when creating work for film output, where the dynamic range of the image exceeds what can be viewed on your display monitor. However, it's also useful in regular broadcast work, where the transition from RGB space to YIQ or YUV video space can often produce unpleasant banding or contouring in smooth graduated backgrounds. To work in float space in Motion, first open Project Properties by pressing Command-J, then choose a bit depth of either 16-bit for video output or 32-bit, more commonly used for film. Due to the extreme calculations required when working in Float, it's unlikely that you'll be able to preserve real-time design performance while previewing. The solution is to temporarily move back to 8-bit performance while designing. You can do this by unchecking Preview Float Bit Depth in the View menu. Motion can import and export high dynamic range images via the OpenEXR format. But even exporting to a format like DV will benefit from Float, since the output will be smoothly dithered to the native video color space.
Motion 2 also introduces a new and unique way of animating motion graphics elements.
It's called the Replicator, and it allows you to convert a single element into a flowing pattern. Among other things, different pattern shapes are available. The number of repetitions can be varied, and the scaling of the pattern can be adjusted. What makes the replicator really interesting is the sequence replicator behavior. Similar to the sequence text behavior, sequence replicator enables keyframeless animation of several of the replicator's parameters. Including rotation, color tint, opacity, and scale. Animations can also be set to loop back to the original state. Some of the other significant improvements in version 2 of Motion include native HDV support, extended support of DVD Studio Pro markers, MIDI note trigger and slider support, new filters and generators, and new keyframing functionality. Let's return to our tour of the interface. Go ahead and close the timing pane if you have it open by pressing the function key F6, but leave the project pane open to the Layers tab. If you closed it earlier, just press function key F5 to toggle it open again. Motion is a real-time design motion graphic system, which allows you to continually play back your project while making adjustments to the various elements contained within. Before you can do this, however, you need to specify what portion of your timeline you want to preview. You do this by setting the play range in and out points. At the base of the canvas is a small track with a playhead known as the mini timeline. The mini timeline provides quick access to the timing parameters of selected objects in your project, along with the playhead indicating the current frame position. Click and hold the mouse over the left pointing triangle at the far right of the screen. This is the play range out point. Drag it to the left until the tooltip pop-up reads 120. The out point of the play range is now set to 120 frames. Begin playback by pressing the play button at the base of the canvas or by pressing the spacebar. Notice when the playhead reaches our out point at frame 120, it loops back to the start. This gives you a manageable section of the timeline to work with as you construct your project. Templates include placeholders for text and footage that can be replaced by simple drag and drop. In the Layers tab, click on the small disclosure triangle next to Replace Here to open that section. The element labeled Replace Here is called a layer, and it's essentially a folder for grouping several elements together in one place. You'll see an object called Replace One. That's the placeholder we'll substitute with footage. In the utility window to the left of the screen, click back to the file browser. In the upper pane, click on the drive you copied the tutorial media to, then in the lower pane, navigate to Final Cut Studio Training, Motion Graphics, Content. Click and drag short rasterface.mov from the file browser into the Layer tab and release the mouse when it's positioned directly over the Replace One object and the pointer icon has turned into a curved arrow. The placeholder is now replaced with our custom footage. Press spacebar to stop playback or click on the pause button at the base of the canvas. Drag the playhead to around about frame 90. You'll see that there's a title included with the template. Right now it reads First Last. Instead of locating it in the Layers tab, you can simply select the text tool at the top of the canvas, denoted with a T icon, and double-click on the text to edit it. Type Dave Rastovich, the name of the surfer in the image we added previously, and press the Escape key to exit text entry mode. When you resume playback by pressing the spacebar or play button, you'll see that you've successfully customized the template. You could continue to customize the rest of the template by moving the play range in and out points to another section of the project, but it's time now to work with the trailer we edited together in the Final Cut Pro 5 tutorial. First, we need to return to Final Cut Pro to see just how the integration between the two applications works. From the Motion menu at the top of the screen, choose Quit Motion. If you want to return to this project later, you can save it when prompted. Otherwise, just click Don't Save, and Motion will exit. Launch Final Cut Pro. Unless you've been working on other projects since completing the Final Cut Pro tutorial, the final color-corrected version should automatically open. If not, choose File, Open, and locate your saved project. Alternatively, you can load the color-corrected project from the Tutorials folder in Edit, Projects. If you receive a message that render files have gone offline, simply click Continue, then choose Sequence, Render All, Video to re-render the missing files. The first thing we want to do is create lower third titles for the two surfers in the film. They're introduced right at the start of the trailer. We could use Final Cut Pro's built-in text engine to create simple titles, but for more elaborate text effects, it's better to shift the job to Motion. In the timeline, click on the rasterface.mov clip to select it, then hold down the Shift key and click on the andyface.mov clip to select it as well. Holding down the Shift key allows you to add a clip to a selection without deselecting the clips already part of that selection. Don't worry about selecting the fade up transition at the very beginning of the two clips. Motion will only import the clips anyway, not the transition filters that join them. From the File menu, choose Send to Motion Project. You're greeted with a dialog box which offers a save name and location, along with two checkboxes. When the Launch Motion option is checked, Motion will automatically launch with the exported project immediately after you click the Save button. The Embed Motion Content button is a little more significant. If you leave it checked, Final Cut Pro will remove the selected footage from the timeline and replace it with a reference to the motion clip you're in the process of creating. That's great if you're done editing in Final Cut Pro and want to finish all your work in Motion, but in our case, we only want to create some text to overlay on top of the selected clips. We may want to change the timing of the edit at a later date. Uncheck the Embed Motion Content box.
Call the new project Trailer Lower Thirds and save to Final Cut Studio Training, Motion Graphics, Projects. Because we unchecked the Embed option, the clips will remain in the Final Cut Pro timeline, but Motion will open a project containing the same clips.
Press the spacebar or the play button at the base of the canvas to resume playback. What you'll see is a cuts-only version of the two clips. You may have noticed so far while working with Motion that the playhead position is listed in frames. This is often an easy way to count animations, but for most editing tasks, you'll want to work in timecode. Click on the clock icon to the left of the current playhead indicator at the bottom left of the canvas, and the count instantly changes to SMPTE timecode. We'll be creating identical title effects for both surfers. Because the second clip is shorter than the first, we'll start creating the effect there. That way it's guaranteed to also fit the first clip. Stop playback by pressing the spacebar or the pause button at the base of the canvas. Click and drag the playhead in the mini timeline until the second surfer, Andy Irons, appears in the canvas. To avoid conflict with that transition between the two clips back in Final Cut Pro, scrub forward again a few frames to around 6:15 for NTSC or 6:12 for PAL. Before we start typing, it's important to know where it's safe to add titles on screen without risk of them being clipped out when displayed on different television sets. Motion provides safe zones for this purpose. Click on the View menu and select Safe Zones to activate them. The inner of the two blue lines is called Title Safe. As long as our titles appear inside this area, they'll be visible to the majority of TV viewers. You may or may not have noticed a dark shaded window overlaying the rest of the interface. If you can't see it, press the D key to activate it. This window is called the dashboard, and it provides quick access to important controls in Motion. It's context sensitive, so it'll change depending on what tool is selected. Next, select the text tool from the tool palette at the top of the canvas or press the T key. Click once in the lower left of the canvas, just inside the title safe area. A flashing cursor will appear, and you're ready to type. Type Andy Irons, then press the Escape key to exit text mode. Chances are that the default font is a little uninspiring. That's okay. The dashboard makes it easy to choose the perfect font for the job. In the dashboard, click once on the triangle to the right of the current font name to expose the current list of system fonts. Now, simply click and drag over the labels for the different font names. As you do so, you'll see the font automatically updates in the canvas. Once you've decided on a font, you can then also modify its size and style from the dashboard. One thing this text will need to stand out from its background is a drop shadow. However, there's no control in the dashboard for adding a drop shadow. In this case, we'll need to access the full list of parameters for the text. We can do this in the Inspector tab. By the way, if you ever accidentally deselect the text while you're working through these steps, simply open the project pane by pressing Function key F5, then click on the text object in the Layers tab to reselect it. F5 will hide the project pane again when you're done. Move the dashboard to the right side of the screen if it's in the way, then click over to the Inspector tab in the Utility window. The Inspector has 4 tabs, and the 4th tab contains information specific to the selected project element. In this case, we have text selected, so the 4th tab contains text properties. The Text Inspector actually has 3 subsections: Format, Style, and Layout, accessible by clicking their respective buttons at the top of the inspector. Click over to the Style tab of the Text Inspector. Check the box next to Drop Shadow toward the bottom of the window. you'll see that a drop shadow is instantly added to the text in the canvas. It's a little too hard right now, so drag the blur slider in the drop shadow section to around 1 to soften it. In this shot, the shadow on the text can afford to be subtle, so set its opacity down to around 40%. Resume playback by pressing the play button at the base of the canvas. We've successfully created a title, but right now it just pops onto the screen. We'll use some animation to enhance the effect. Stop the playback and drag the playhead in the mini timeline until the text is visible in the canvas. Select the text if it's deselected. In the Utility window, click to the Library tab. The Library tab is a great place to browse for ideas. In this case, we're looking for a text animation to suit our purposes. Click the Behaviors group in the upper left pane, and then from the list of behaviors, choose the Text Sequence subgroup. In the lower pane, click on the disclosure triangle to the left of text Glow to open that section. Simply by clicking on each of the behaviors in turn, you can see a preview of the effect in the window at the top of the Library tab. Towards the bottom, the streak behavior looks like it might provide an interesting entrance for our text. Click and drag the streak effect onto the text in the canvas. When you resume playback, you'll see that the text now streaks in from the left. All that's left of the text animation is to bring it off the screen when it's done. For this, we'll use a simple fade out. Make sure the text is still selected, then at the top of the canvas, click on the Behaviors button. The Behaviors button mirrors the list of behaviors found in the library in a convenient, easy access menu. Behaviors are Motion's revolutionary system for creating complex animations without the need for keyframing. In this case, we'll choose the simple fade in, fade out behavior. You should now see in your dashboard a visual control with two triangles. If your dashboard is hidden, press the D key to bring it up, and if necessary, press the D key again until the fade in, fade out triangle control appears. We don't need to fade the text in at the beginning. Our streak behavior has already taken care of that. So drag the right edge of the first triangle until the frame count below it reads 0. When you resume playback, you should now find that the text fades out at the end of the timeline. It's now time to repurpose the text animation for the first surfer, Dave Rastovich. Open the project pane by pressing the function key F5. Select the Andy Irons text object itself, not just one of the behaviors listed as attached to it. From the Edit menu, choose Duplicate. You now have an identical copy of the text. Resume playback. In the mini timeline, drag the timing bar for Andy Irons' copy until you're happy with the timing relative to the first clip. Now the timing's right, but the name isn't. Stop playback and drag the playhead over a portion of the timeline where the new text is fully formed in the canvas. Select the Text tool and click onto the text to edit it. Rename it Dave Rastovich, then press the Escape key to exit text entry mode. Resume playback. You should now have a completed animation title sequence. We've kept things simple for this tutorial. Once you get a better grasp of what Motion is capable of, you'll probably want to finesse the animation a little more. For now, though, it's time to bring the titles back into Final Cut Pro. Remember when we exported the footage to Motion from Final Cut Pro, we elected not to embed the Motion project into the Final Cut Pro timeline. Instead, the original clips were left intact in the Final Cut Pro sequence. But we also have those same clips included in the Motion project we just created. To keep from doubling up the clips back in Final Cut Pro, we'll turn off our video elements in Motion and just leave the text visible. In the Layers tab, click on the checkboxes to the left of rasterface.mov and antiface.mov to deactivate them. You should now only see the text appearing over black in the canvas. Save the project in the File menu, then quit out of Motion. Final Cut Pro should still be open in the background. In Final Cut Pro, make sure the Video tab is selected and choose File, Import, Files, and select Final Cut Studio Training, Motion Graphics, Projects, Trailer Lower Thirds. trailerlowerthirds.motn will be imported as a virtual clip into your video bin, ready to use and edit just like any other clip in the project. Drag the trailerlowerthirds.motn clip into the timeline and position it above the original V1 video track. When the clip is flush with the far left of the timeline, release the mouse. This creates a new superimposed video track which will allow our title animation to appear over the top of the original video. Before you can correctly play back the titles, this section of the timeline needs to be rendered in the native DV codec we're using for the rest of the footage. Select the clip and press Option R to render it. Once Final Cut Pro has finished writing the video, you can play back the timeline and see the final result. The surfer Dave Rastovich commonly goes by his nickname Rasta, so it would be nice to include this in his title. Fortunately, the Final Cut Studio integration makes a change like this very simple. Select the trailerlowerthirds.motn clip in the timeline. Control-click or right-click on the clip and choose Open in Editor. When you do so, Motion relaunches and loads up the project. It's important that you always launch the Motion project using this Open in Editor command in order to ensure that Final Cut Pro keeps track of the changes you're making and the media remains linked. Simply drag the playhead to a position in the timeline where the Dave Rastovich title is fully visible. Select the text tool and click on the text to type Dave Rasta Rastovich. Press the Escape key to exit text entry mode. Press Command S to save the project. We can now quit out of Motion altogether, or for convenience we can simply Command Tab back to Final Cut Pro, leaving Motion open in the background ready for future edits. The final step for the project is to create a logo sequence at the tail end of the trailer. We're going to export the last clip of the sequence into Motion to create the final transition to the logo. But to keep the cross dissolve at the head of the clip from being affected, we'll simply split the clip after the transition and only export the section of the clip to the right of the split. While, as we've noted earlier, transitions in Final Cut Pro will not export into Motion, settings and keyframes applied to a clip's Motion tab will. One easy way to create a dissolve in Final Cut Pro that will export to Motion is to animate a clip's opacity setting to affect the dissolve. An entire multi-layer Final Cut Pro timeline can be imported into Motion simply by selecting the clips and choosing Send to Motion. Click in the timecode entry box at the top left of the Final Cut Pro timeline and type 5400 to jump the playhead to 54 seconds and 0 frames. Select the razor blade tool from the tool palette or simply press the B key. Make sure snapping is turned on. Press the N key if it isn't, and cut the clip at the playhead position. Select Wide Curve Retime.mov to the right of the split point, then choose File, Send to, Motion Project. This time, we want to edit the clip completely inside of Motion, so we'll leave the Embed Motion Content option checked. Save the project in Final Cut Studio Training, Motion Graphics, Projects, under the name Final Logo, and click Save. When the Motion project launches, you'll see the clip from Motion ready to play in the timeline. The Motion project is automatically set to the length of the clip that was imported. Because we need extra room in the timeline to add the logo, we need to extend the length of the project. Click once in the project duration box in the lower right corner of the canvas and type 1200. Now we need to set the preview play range while we design. Move the playhead to frame 402. From the Mark menu, choose Mark Play Range In. Drag the playhead to the far right of the timeline or press the End key on the keyboard. Choose Mark Play Range Out Point. We've now established the section of our timeline that we want to preview. Drag the playhead back toward the play range endpoint and hold down the Shift key. Holding down Shift snaps the playhead to special timeline features such as the play range in and out points. Release the mouse when the playhead snaps to the play range endpoint. Open the Layers tab by pressing Function key F5. If the layer inside is closed, just click on its disclosure triangle to expand it. In the Utility window, click on the File Browser tab and navigate to Final Cut Studio Training, Motion Graphics, Content. Select undersurfer.mov and drag it into the Layers tab, releasing it when the circle of the position indicator line is aligned with the bottom left edge of the Wide Curve Retimed Clips label. If you drag too far to the left, you'll import the clip and create a new layer in the process. If this happens, simply press Command-Z to undo and drag the clip back into the Layers tab, aligning correctly with the Wide Curve Retimed clip. While we work on creating the logo clip, let's temporarily deactivate the Wide Curve Retimed clip. In the Layers tab, uncheck the box next to Wide Curve Retimed. Make sure you're still at the play range endpoint. If not, Shift-drag the playhead to snap back there. Then drag logo.psd into the Layers tab and insert it between Undersurfer and Wide Curve Retimed. It's now time to add an effect to the logo. Click on the Add Filter button at the top of the canvas and choose Add Filter, Glow, Light Rays. We'll animate the light rays effect to zoom the logo onto the screen. New to version 2 of Motion is a keyframing option that enables auto keyframing only on adjusted parameters. From the Mark menu, choose Recording Options and check the box next to Record Keyframes on Animated Parameters Only, and click OK. At the base of the canvas, click on the Record Animation button to activate it. In this new method of keyframing in Motion, the Record Animation button will only work once an initial keyframe has been set for a given parameter. We want to animate the amount parameter for the light rays effect. Click on the Inspector tab of the Utility window and make sure it's set to the Filters tab. Click on the Animation menu button, that's the small minus sign to the right of the amount slider, and choose Add Keyframe. Back in the timeline, drag the playhead to around 6 seconds in the timeline, and then drag the amount slider to 0, either in the inspector or in the dashboard. Resume playback, and you should see the effect animate in nicely, although the ending is a little abrupt. Click back on the Amount Parameters Animation menu button and choose Show in Keyframe Editor. The Keyframe Editor will pop into view with the amount keyframe curve already loaded. Simply Control-click or right-click on the second keyframe in the curve editor and choose Interpolation Ease In. Press Function key F6 to close the timing pane and resume playback. The title now comes to a graceful stop. Let's add one more filter to enhance the effect. Choose Add Filter, Distortion, Wave. In the inspector, set the amplitude to 0.5. If you resume playback, you'll find that there's no waving going on. That's because the wave filter needs its offset parameter animated to create the waving effect. Now you could always keyframe this, but Motion provides a much simpler method. Parameter behaviors. In the inspector, Control-click or right-click on the text label for the offset parameter. This provides a list of parameter behaviors at your disposal. In this case, we'll choose the rate behavior. When you click on the rate behavior, the inspector should jump to the Behaviors subtab. Set the rate to 15, and you should now find in the canvas that you have a gentle waving motion. To complete the effect, select the logo itself in the Layers tab, then in the dashboard, press the D key if it's hidden, change the blend mode to Stencil Alpha. The logo is now working as a matte to nicely reveal the Undersurfer clip beneath it. Now the only thing left to do is fade out the original Wide Curve Retime clip. In the Layers tab, check the box to the left of Wide Curve Retime to reactivate the clip. Select the clip and choose Add Behavior, Fade In, Fade Out. We only need the fade out, so in the dashboard, drag the edge of the first triangle to the left until the fade value reads 0 frames. Press Command-S to save the project, then Command-Tab back to Final Cut Pro. Notice how the original clip has been completely replaced by the Motion project in the timeline. Even though we increased the length of the project in Motion, Final Cut Pro is still using the length set for the clip in the original edit. To fix this, simply position your mouse over the right end of finallogo.motn and click and drag to the right until the clip is extended as far as it can go. Finally, let's use a transition to fade the clip out at the very end. Snap your playhead to the end of the clip. Click over to the Effects tab, open the Dissolve folder, and drag Dip to Color Dissolve into the timeline and drop it on the end of finallogo.motn. The clip's not yet in the native format of the Final Cut Pro project, so for real-time playback, we need to render it. Select the finallogo.motn clip, then choose Sequence, Render All, Video. Our trailer is complete. You can go ahead and preview it from the beginning. Save your project when you're done. To prepare the project for DVD authoring, we need to encode it to MPEG-2. Click into the Main Project tab. That's the tab with the same name as your saved project. And select Sequence 1. That's the sequence we just finished editing. Select File, Export, using Compressor. Compressor is Apple's powerful file format conversion system. It allows you to render your video to literally dozens of different formats for applications as diverse as web streaming and high-definition DVD. You can also use Compressor to perform optical flow conversions of footage from one frame rate and size to another, such as PAL to NTSC or NTSC to PAL. This is far superior to alternate frame blending conversion methods. One of the most powerful new features of Compressor is the ability to distribute rendering of files to multiple machines. Extremely high-quality MPEG-2 renders can be performed by multiple machines in a fraction of the time required by a single computer. This is a great way to utilize the downtime of Macintoshes in an office or studio environment, and when the workstations are usually sitting idle, they can be accessed to quickly process the files of the day. The distributed rendering of Compressor, combined with its extremely high-quality 2-pass variable bitrate MPEG-2 encoder, make it an affordable alternative to dedicated hardware encoders. After selecting Export using Compressor, the batch window appears. For simplicity, we'll be rendering only to the machine we're authoring on, but we could just as easily submit the render to a group of computers, known as a cluster, for fast parallel processing. Click on the arrows in the setting column to choose an encoding format for the trailer. Because this project is so small, space on the DVD is not an issue, so go ahead and select DVD Best Quality 90 minutes 16:9, reflecting the 16:9 aspect ratio of the trailer we've just created. The submenu for this selection gives you the options of rendering an AIFF audio file from the source media, a Dolby AC3 file, the actual MPEG-2 stream, or all three. Choose All from the menu. For each of the three files now listed, set the destination to Other and choose Final Cut Studio Training, Motion Graphics, Content, and click Open. Press the Submit button to begin the render. In the last two sections, we used Final Cut Pro and Motion to create a visually compelling promotional trailer. In this tutorial, we'll use Apple's new audio post-production application, Soundtrack Pro, to edit some of the audio in our project. This process is often referred to as audio sweetening. Soundtrack Pro has been designed from the ground up as a post-production audio sweetening tool. While many other digital audio applications are designed for music production and composition, the unique interface and toolset of Soundtrack Pro have been developed specifically to streamline the tasks common to video work.
I don't think about it. Right now I'm looking at the ocean, looking at the waves, seeing what's going on.
Even if you send your final audio sessions to an audio engineer for mastering, you'll find the integration between Final Cut Pro and Soundtrack Pro indispensable for cleaning up sections of dialogue and salvaging otherwise unusable sound bites. Let's begin by taking a tour of the Soundtrack Pro interface. Choose File, Open, and in the Final Cut Studio Training folder, navigate to Audio Post, Projects, Sample Multitrack.stap. The interface is divided into four main sections. To the left, the utility window comprises four tabs. The Video tab provides a preview of the video associated with audio files being edited. The Recording tab can be used to adjust recording parameters and monitor recording levels. The Meters tab contains output peak meters and enables you to jump to peaking areas in the timeline. And the Details tab offers specific information about selected media elements. Below the Utility window is the Media and Effects Manager. It comprises the Browser tab for previewing and importing stored media content, the Search tab for accessing Apple loops used in the creation of music beds, along with hundreds of included Foley sound effects, the Favorites tab for saving and retrieving favorite file directories, the Bin tab, used for viewing and accessing current project files, and the Effects tab, which provides access to dozens of high-quality audio filters. The main section of the interface is the Project window. Here, you assemble and edit audio files in timeline form, in much the same way as you assemble overlaying video clips in Final Cut Pro. The Project window is also host to the Waveform editor, where individual audio files can be precisely edited and filtered. A fourth interface window isn't visible when you launch Soundtrack Pro with the default interface setup. It's the Mixer and can be accessed by choosing Window, Mixer, or pressing Command 2 on the keyboard. Similar to a traditional desktop audio mixing console, the Mixer provides channel strips for each of your audio tracks, along with a master output strip and optional auxiliary buses. Here, effects can be applied to individual channels or buses, and audio gain and pan can be modified and animated. Soundtrack Pro also offers support for external hardware control surfaces, and these can be used in conjunction with the Mixer for real-time tactile mixing. To close the Mixer, simply click the Close button at the top left of the window. If you want to have access to both the Project window and the Mixer, you can choose an alternate setup from the Windows menu. Choose Window, Layouts, Mixer, or press the function key F2. The interface is then redrawn as a split screen, with the Project window at the top and the Mixer below. Window, Layouts, Standard, or function key F1, will return to the default view. Soundtrack Pro can operate in one of two formats, either as a multi-track editor or as an individual waveform editor. We'll take a look at both in turn. In the case of multi-track projects, there's a second distinction. Projects can be time-based or beats-based. Time-based projects are best for working with dialogue and Foley effects. Beats-based projects are best when designing music beds from multiple loops. In a beats-based project, Apple loops will conform to the tempo and musical key of the project, making it easy to mix and match multiple loops to create a compelling soundtrack. While Soundtrack Pro is a powerful application in its own right, its integration with Final Cut Pro 5 creates an extremely flexible round-trip workflow for the treatment of audio. Let's take a look at some of the typical uses for Soundtrack Pro in the course of an edit session. Quit out of Soundtrack Pro and launch Final Cut Pro. Close any open projects by choosing File, Close Project. Choose File, Open, and select Final Cut Studio Training, Audio Post, Projects, BioSweeten. This is the project we'll be working on. If you play back the sequence, you'll hear that we have a music bed interspersed with sound bites. The first sound bite from Andy is fine. The second is a little more problematic. There's an expletive bleep right at the start of the voiceover. That's fine in the context of the movie itself, but it breaks the mood of the biopiece we've created here. We'll use Soundtrack Pro to remove it. In audio track A5 in the timeline, click on the Andy BioSeek 02.mov audio clip to select it. Choose File, Send to. Notice that we have the option of exporting to a Soundtrack Pro audio file or a Soundtrack Pro multi-track project. Since we're just editing a single file, we'll choose Soundtrack Pro audio file. You're asked to choose a name and location for the new file. Call it Andy Bio to Fix and save it to Final Cut Studio Training, Audio Post, Projects. Soundtrack Pro automatically launches with the waveform open and ready for editing. Press the spacebar to begin playback. Notice how Soundtrack Pro has automatically imported the associated video clip into the Video tab for easy previewing. By default, the waveform editor displays an amplitude waveform, indicating the variations in level of the audio over time. Soundtrack Pro also offers a frequency spectrum view. Click the Frequency Spectrum button at the top right of the project window. Frequency determines the pitch of a sound. Deep bass sounds appear at the base of this view, while higher notes appear towards the top of the image. Often, frequency information provides distinct editing cues not visible in the standard amplitude waveform. In this case, the start and end of the censorship bleep are clearly visible as a narrow frequency band in the soundtrack, making it much easier to edit. Press spacebar to pause playback. Select the Zoom tool at the top left of the project window. In the Waveform Editor timeline, click and drag from just to the left of the bleep's start to just after its endpoint, then release the mouse. The editor zooms to focus on just this portion of the sound file. Click back to the Selection tool, then click and drag through only the portion of the timeline containing the bleep. If you need to extend your selection slightly, hold down the Shift key and click and drag out the selection as needed. Click the Display Waveform button to move back to the standard waveform view. An essential but often overlooked part of waveform editing is performing edits at zero crossing points. Zero crossing points are places in the timeline where a waveform passes over the center line marked as 0 on the vertical axis. Editing at zero crossing points reduces the risk of introducing audible clicks into the edited waveform. Soundtrack Pro provides several tools for fine-tuning zero crossing points. These are available from the Edit menu, Adjust Selection to Zero Crossing. However, the keyboard shortcuts for these options are intuitive and far easier to work with than the menu, so we'll use those. Just above the Return key on your keyboard are the left and right bracket keys. To move the endpoint of your selection to the nearest zero crossing point to the left, press the left bracket key. To move it back to the nearest zero crossing point to the right, press the right bracket key. We want to make sure we remove all the bleep from the soundtrack, so make sure your new selection endpoint includes the entire portion of the waveform containing the bleep. To adjust the outpoint zero crossing position, hold down the Shift key and press the left or right bracket keys to shift the outpoint to the left or right respectively. Once you're satisfied that your selection safely covers the censorship bleep and that the in and out points of the selection both sit at zero crossing points, it's time to remove the sound. Choose Process, Silence. The bleep is removed. Click to the left of the selection area to cancel the selection, then press spacebar to resume playback. Drag the zoom slider at the base of the editor to the right to view the entire waveform again. You should find that the bleep is completely removed. There should also be no clicks at the edit points, although there is a click in the audio just after the edit, something in the original file that we'll correct in a moment. As you listen to the clip, you'll notice immediately how unnatural the pause sounds. That's because the sound of the surf is clearly audible behind the rest of the voice recording, but entirely absent where we've silenced the clip. We'll use the ambient noise tools to fix this. To fix silence areas like these, we need to replace the gap with background noise typical of the whole clip.
Right now, I'm looking at the ocean.
Andy's voice doesn't pause through the entire segment, so we'll need to grab a sample of the background noise right after he finishes speaking. Drag select through a portion of the waveform right at the end of the clip, before the background voices begin. Once you've made your selection, press the spacebar to make sure that you've only selected noise, and not the tail end of Andy's voice or the start of the background voices. Choose Process, Set Ambient Noise Print. This section of the audio is now stored in memory as the desired ambient noise. It's time to apply the noise print to our silenced area. Unfortunately, we deselected that area of the waveform several steps back. We could try matching the selection by hand, but we might risk accidentally overwriting adjacent sections of the clip, or worse, leaving a tiny section of very noticeable silence at the edges of our selection. Fortunately, Soundtrack Pro includes a powerful selection history tool. Simply click on the left arrow button at the top of the waveform editor until the selection you used to perform the silence becomes visible again. Then choose Process, Apply Ambient Noise. Click to the left of the selection area to cancel the selection, then resume playback. The ambient noise is there, but it's a little too strong for the clip at this point. Most likely a compressor was used during the filming, causing the background noise to suppress with Andy's voice. Click the previous selection button again to recover the selection area, then choose Process, Adjust Amplitude. A new window appears with a level slider and a preview play button. Press the play button to hear the selection play. Drag the level slider to around -5 to reduce the noise level by 5 decibels. When you play back the entire clip, the inserted noise now sounds much closer to ambient noise in the adjacent sections. Notice that a list has formed to the left of the waveform window. This is known as the Actions list and is the heart of Soundtrack Pro's non-destructive workflow. Each operation we've performed on the waveform is listed as a discrete entry in this list. Simply by unchecking an item from the list, its effect is removed from the clip. You can even drag items up or down in the list to adjust the order in which they're applied. Uncheck Adjust Amplitude and resume playback. The applied ambient noise returns to its original level. Recheck Adjust Amplitude. It's now time to fix the 2 clicks clearly audible in the clip. We'll take advantage of Soundtrack Pro's Find and Fix workflow to solve this. Let's start with a click heard as Andy says, "I'm just in the moment," which occurs right around 4.5 seconds into the clip. Drag select through a small portion of the waveform surrounding the click. Resume playback to make sure you've included the click in your selection. At the top of the Actions list, click the Analysis button to switch to the Analysis Type list. The analysis area of the interface provides an automated way of fixing common problems associated with audio, such as power line hum, clipping, and clicks and pops. Check the box next to clicks and pops, and then press the Analyze button at the bottom of the list. Soundtrack Pro should identify one click in the selected area. Click on the single entry in the analysis results list, then click the Fix button at the very bottom of the list. Sampling the playback area again, you'll find that the click is removed. A second click occurs toward the start of the clip, right when Andy says, "Think." Repeat the process to treat this click. In this case, the click is a little thicker in its frequency range, so the process will take the edge off the click, but won't eliminate it entirely. We've now treated the most significant issues with this clip. Once it's recombined with the music bed, other minor issues won't be detectable. Choose File, Save, then Soundtrack Pro, quit Soundtrack Pro to return to Final Cut Pro. If you play back the timeline, you'll find that the audio has been updated and the censorship bleep removed. Moving on in the sequence, you'll find a speech by Rasta's father on his heritage. It's a stirring speech, but the loud ambient noise in the background detracts from the music bed. We'll use Soundtrack Pro to fix this. In the A5 audio track, click on Rasta BIOS Seek 1.mov to select it. From the File menu, choose Send to Soundtrack Pro Audio File Project. Call the project Raster Bio 1 Fix and save it to Final Cut Studio Training, Audio Post, Projects. Noise removal in Soundtrack Pro is a similar process to adding ambient noise, but this time we'll be sampling noise to remove it from the clip. Find a pause in the dialogue and drag select through it. Play back the selection to make sure you've only included background noise. Also be careful that there aren't any additional background noises, such as a shuffling chair or creaking window. Once you're satisfied, choose Process, Set Noise Print. Note, this is a different option to set ambient noise print used in the earlier exercise. Click to the left of the selection area to cancel the selection. Select Process, Reduce Noise. A window opens with two slider controls. The Reduce Noise filter subtracts the sampled noise print away from the signal, leaving only the primary sounds. At the base of the window, press the play button. Drag the noise threshold slider to the right and the noise is removed. It's important to balance the amount of noise removed against the quality of the final audio. A great way to determine how much damage is being done to the primary sound is to listen to exactly what's being removed. Check the box labeled Noise Only. You're now listening to what's being removed from the clip. Most likely, you'll hear the voice faintly distorted in the background, sounding like a poorly tuned radio. This is the portion of the voice signal that's unintentionally being removed by the operation. Adjust the noise threshold until you're satisfied that only a very negligible portion of the voice is being removed. You can also adjust the tone control to accommodate voices of higher or lower pitch. Note that this control will also affect from which portions of the spectrum noise is removed and may adversely affect the noise reduction. When you're satisfied, uncheck Noise Only. To compare the reduced signal to the original, click on the Preview Effect Bypass button to eliminate the noise reduction. Once you've compared the sound, click the button again to reapply the noise reduction. If you're satisfied with the noise reduction levels, apply the effect. You may find that the remaining noise sounds unnatural after applying the noise removal. In our case, the music bed in Final Cut Pro will mask the effect of the extra noise, but in other cases, you may need to ease off the intensity of the noise removal to preserve the natural sound of the clip. Choose File, Save, then Soundtrack Pro, quit Soundtrack Pro. Back in Final Cut Pro, resume playback. You'll find that the audio now stands out clearly against the music bed. Save the project in the Audio Post, Projects folder as Audio Fixed. So far, we've treated problems with individual clips, but it would be nice to take advantage of Soundtrack Pro's feature set to make adjustments to the entire mix. We can do this by exporting the audio as a multi-track project. Choose Edit, select All, or press Command-A to select the entire sequence. Choose File, Send to, Soundtrack Pro Multitrack Project. Save in the Audio Post Projects folder as Final Bio Mix. This time, when Soundtrack Pro opens, you'll see the standard project window instead of the waveform editor, and all the audio clips from Final Cut Pro are laid out on their respective tracks. Notice too that the preview video is the final edit from Final Cut Pro, not just the individual clips associated with the audio. Let's begin by taking a look at how we can apply effects to individual channels. Resume playback of the timeline, then click on the A3 and A4 track header to select it. From the Effects tab, select the Soundtrack Pro category in the upper left pane, then double-click on Compressor. Compressors are a great way to help vocals stand out in a mix by reducing the dynamic range of the voice, thereby making it easier to hear quiet phrasings and pronunciation. The compressor is automatically applied with the default settings. To access a graphical interface for the effect, click the Advanced button next to Compressor in the lower pane of the Effects tab. The compression ratio is set to 2:1 by default, a moderate setting that should serve our purposes. Also note that the gain reduction meter indicates a moderate compression when the audio is playing. If there was too much or too little compression taking place, the threshold could be increased or reduced. Now that the compressor has been applied, the voice track is sitting a little too strong in the mix. In the A3 and A4 header, drag the volume slider slightly to the left to reduce the level of the clip. We also need to make adjustments to audio levels for a couple of the clips. At the end of Andy's second clip, we have some voices momentarily showing up in the audio just after Andy finishes speaking. We'll use the track's volume envelope to get rid of this. Click the disclosure triangle to the left of A3 and A4's track header to expose the track's envelopes. Drag the playhead towards the end of the second Andy clip and then use the zoom slider in the lower left of the project window to zoom in. Position the playhead over the section of the waveform just after the end of Andy's voice, and then double-click on the line in the volume envelope bar. This creates an envelope point at the mouse pointer position. Move a little further down the envelope bar and double-click again to create a second point. Drag this second point down to the bottom of the envelope bar. Also drag the clip endpoint, automatically created by Soundtrack Pro, down to the bottom of the bar. If we leave things as they are now, the raster audio will also be muted. So we need to bring the volume back up after the problem area. Double-click on the envelope line just after the end of the clip to create another envelope point. This time, move the new point up until the decibel value to its right reads 0 dB. Zoom out again when you're finished. The second issue we need to fix is the way the two clips of Rasta's father run together awkwardly. The second clip begins because he's been given this incredible genetic thing. If we remove because, the phrase will set better out of its original context and will have a more comfortable spacing between the two speeches. We could animate the envelope again to achieve this, but let's look at how you can access the waveform editor from inside the multitrack project. Click on the second audio of the two adjacent audio clips to select it, then Control-click or right-click and choose Open in Editor. This launches the waveform editor for the clip in a second tab alongside the main multitrack project tab. Move to 28.5 seconds into the waveform and press play. This is where the word because occurs. Drag select through the ambient noise immediately before this, resume playback to ensure you've selected only noise, and then choose Process, Set Ambient Noise Print. Once you've identified where because sits in the waveform, drag select it. Resume playback, then shift drag the edges of the selection area until you've comfortably isolated because from the surrounding audio. Choose Process, Apply Ambient Noise. Because has now been replaced with ambient noise.
Today, he's been given this incredible genetic thing.
The sweetening's complete. It's time to export the mix for use in the final DVD. Choose File, Export, Export Mix. Save to Final Cut Studio Training, DVD, Assets under the name Bio Soundtrack. Leave the bit depth and sample rate set to 16-bit, 48 kHz respectively, and click Export. With all the content created, it's time to author the promotional DVD. In this tutorial, we'll be working inside DVD Studio Pro to create the DVD using the promotional trailer you just cut together and a couple of other prepared elements. Let's start with a look at the DVD Studio Pro interface and improvements that come with version 4. The first thing you'll see when you launch DVD Studio Pro is the welcome screen. It offers you 3 different interface configurations: Basic, Extended, and Advanced. The Basic interface is useful if you've been working with iDVD and are just starting to move into the richer feature set of DVD Studio Pro. For this tutorial, you'll be using the Advanced interface layout. This will give you a better grasp of the overall interface. It's easy to change between these configurations, so if you find things overwhelming, you can later move back to a simpler layout. Go ahead and click the Advanced button. The next decision to make is the video standard to use, NTSC or PAL. This will be determined by the part of the world to which you plan to distribute your DVD. The good news is that with Compressor's new advanced resizing and conversion options, you can build your content in one standard and then convert to the other. This makes building NTSC and PAL versions of a DVD much simpler. If you're working with the PAL version of the tutorial, go ahead and press PAL. For NTSC, choose NTSC. New to DVD Studio Pro version 4, in addition to authoring traditional standard definition DVDs, you can also author to the high definition or HD DVD format. This format provides a much higher resolution of playback than traditional DVDs. Be aware that to play HD DVD, consumers must have a new HD DVD compatible player or be playing back content on a computer-based HD DVD player. And while you can author HD DVD content to traditional DVD media for smaller projects, to accommodate the larger file sizes of HD content, you'll most likely need to move to Blue Laser disc media for your finished project. Note, the new Apple DVD player is capable of playing back HD DVD in software, making it a great way to preview HD DVDs in the absence of a dedicated hardware deck and burner. As well as converting between PAL and NTSC formats, Compressor can up-convert standard definition content to high definition. Rather than simply scaling the image up, which produces a softened result, Compressor can detect feature details and maintain their clarity in the resized image. We'll be creating a standard definition DVD, so leave default resolution set to SD DVD. Finally, you can customize the default DVD language by selecting from the options in the pop-up menu. We'll be using English for this project. Click OK to close the welcome screen. You're now looking at the advanced interface configuration. You can switch back to the simple or intermediate at any time simply by accessing them in the Windows Configuration menu. The advanced configuration layout comprises the project window and 2 additional floating windows positioned to its right, the palette window and the inspector window. The project window is divided into 4 quadrants, and the borders between the quadrants can be dragged to quickly resize the quadrants as needed. Starting at the lower left of the screen, the Assets tab manages all the media used to create your DVD. Media files are referred to as assets in DVD authoring. This is similar to the browser in Final Cut Pro. The Log tab next to it provides detailed information about encoding and building tasks that the computer has performed. The upper left quadrant contains the graphical view, which provides a tile-based interface for quickly viewing the relationships between the various assets in your project. The Outline tab is another way to view the structure of the DVD, breaking down project elements into their respective categories. In the upper right quadrant, the Menu tab allows you to edit the look and interactivity of the menus in your project. Different menus can be selected for editing via a pop-up. Next to the menu is the Viewer tab, used for previewing elements of your project as well as editing subtitles. The Connections tab allows you to fine-tune the interactivity between the various menus and assets. The lower right quadrant contains the Track Editor. This is similar to the timeline in Final Cut Pro and allows you to combine different audio, video, and subtitle assets into a single track and create and edit DVD chapter markers for your DVD. Next to the Track tab is the Slideshow, a section for organizing still images into a DVD slideshow, adjusting properties such as their on-screen duration. You can also add transition effects such as dissolves between the slides. The Story tab allows you to make alternate versions of a track with different chapters included or excluded as needed. An example of this would be a second version of a movie with deleted scenes reinserted. The Script tab allows you to create custom interactivity in your DVD using a simple scripting language. The top window to the right of the main interface is the palette. The palette is similar in function to the library and file browser in Motion. It contains several different categories of prepared content, along with quick access to audio, stills, and video assets stored on your hard drive. Like Motion, DVD Studio Pro ships with several professionally designed templates useful for creating high-quality DVDs in a matter of minutes. The lower right window is called the Inspector, and like the Inspector in Motion, it provides access to the parameters of the currently selected project element. Several new features have been added to DVD Studio Pro 4 in addition to the new HD DVD functionality. External audio monitors can be used to preview content while working in DVD Studio Pro, including AC3 surround previewing. Digital Theater System's ES 6.1 digital surround sound is now supported during authoring, and AC3 encoding is now available directly from compressor. Among the many improvements to authoring tools are support for dual layer breaks in the DVD-ROM area, the addition of a VTS editor enabling users to fine-tune the performance of the DVD as it jumps from one element to another, and partitioning of GPRM registers provides many more user-defined variables than previously possible. Menu looping has also been enhanced, as we'll see during the next tutorial. Let's begin by bringing some assets into our project. In our case, the assets we'll be using for this project are located in the DVD section of the Final Cut Studio training folder. Inside the Assets tab in the lower left quadrant of the interface, click the Import button. Navigate to Final Cut Studio Training, DVD, Assets. Select all the media, ignoring the z.internal folder, which just contains media being referenced by our Motion menu project. Now that the assets are imported, it's time to start authoring. In the graphical view, click in the empty gray space to make sure no tiles are selected. The inspector in the lower right corner of the screen will now show the parameters for the entire disk. If a tile had been selected, the inspector would be showing the information specific to that project element instead. Rather than leave the DVD with the uninspiring title Untitled Disk, let's rename it. Click in the name field at the top of the inspector and type Blue Horizon Promo. The graphical view provides an intuitive way to build your DVD structure, essentially creating a flowchart of the entire DVD as you author. Let's start the process with the first screen a viewer will see upon inserting the DVD. Normally, DVDs display an FBI or Interpol warning about copyright. In the case of this DVD, it's a promotional trailer for the Blue Horizon film, so it's more important just to cover the limits of the media's use. It's a single still image file, so we'll create a slideshow to display the image. In the lower right quadrant, click into the Slideshow tab. Click at the base of the Assets tab to deselect all assets. Drag DVD Copyright Slide into the Slideshow tab and release the mouse. Double-click on the slide in the slide list to preview it. You should now see the slide in the viewer. Notice the image has been letterboxed. That's because by default, DVD Studio Pro assumes you're working with a standard definition 4:3 aspect ratio. Since we're working in 16:9, we need to change how DVD Studio Pro interprets the slideshow. Click on the newly created slideshow tile in the graphical view to select it. Then, in the inspector, set the display mode to 16:9 letterbox. The slide now correctly fills the viewer. There are two other 16:9 options in the display mode pop-up, Pan Scan and Pan Scan in Letterbox. These are almost never used and are really only included to maintain full compatibility with the official DVD specification. You can ignore them for almost all authoring jobs you do. Since our entire project is in 16:9, it's a bit cumbersome having to set the display mode for every single element. Instead, we can change the default aspect ratio used anytime an element is created. From the DVD Studio Pro menu, choose Preferences. In the General tab, set the SD DVD display mode to 16:9 letterbox and click OK. Now new menus, tracks, and slideshows will automatically be set to 16:9. Remember to change this back to 4:3 if working on a standard definition DVD later. Right now, the slide is only set to last 5 seconds. The average person would take at least 10 seconds to read the information, so let's set the duration to 10. In the Slideshow tab, select the slide and choose 10 seconds from the duration pop-up. This is the first thing we want viewers to see when they launch the DVD, and the graphical view offers an easy way to designate the first play item. Simply control-click or right-click on the Slideshow 1 tile in the graphical view and select First Play. A small icon appears in the top left corner of the tile, indicating that it will be the first item on the disc to be played. Double-click on the label Slideshow 1 and rename it Copyright Slide. Press Return to exit text entry mode. Our copyright slide currently shares the graphical view with a single menu and a track. These are created for convenience whenever a new project is started, but since they were created before we adjusted the default aspect ratio, they're still set to 4:3. We'll just delete them. Drag select through menu 1 and track 1 and press the delete key to remove them. You can then go ahead and move the copyright slide to the top of the view. To create the main menu for the project, simply control-click or right-click in the graphical view and choose Add Menu. Move the new menu tile just below the copyright slide, then double-click on the menu's tile to load it into the menu tab. We've included a motion menu element created with motion in the assets you imported earlier. We'll set that as the background for the main menu. Drag motionmenu.motn from the Assets tab into the Menu tab, but don't release the mouse. A pop-up menu called the Drop Palette appears. In this case, we want to set this asset as the background, so choose Set Background. You may experience a pause as DVD Studio Pro adds the motion project to the menu. Once completed, you'll be greeted by a black screen. The motion menu fades up from black at the start. Notice also that the aspect ratio of the screen has been set back to the standard definition 4:3. Because the project was designed in motion as an anamorphic movie, we need to tell DVD Studio Pro to interpret it as a 16:9 framing. In the Menu tab of the inspector, set the display mode to 16:9 letterbox. To preview the motion menu, press the Start/Stop Motion Menu button at the lower right of the main menu tab. Most likely, you'll find that the playback of the video stutters. That's okay. DVD Studio Pro is having to render the motion project on the fly. When we go to build the DVD, the movie will be rendered to MPEG-2 to play back flawlessly in a DVD player. The motion menu background is 1 minute in length. After a motion menu runs its course in a DVD player, the menu loops back to the start. If our menu background were to loop back to the very beginning, it would force viewers to sit through the fade up from black and text build. Extremely frustrating if they're getting ready to select a menu item. Instead, DVD Studio Pro allows you to specify a loop point. A loop point indicates the frame at which you want the menu to repeat. A new feature in DVD Studio Pro 4 is the ability to automatically import loop markers set up in motion. Let's take a look at how this works. Back in the Assets tab, control-click or right-click on motionmenu.motn and choose Open in Editor. Motion launches, opening the project used to create the motion menu background. Click on the current time entry box to edit it and type 525 for NTSC or 521 for PAL to jump to that section of the timeline. This is where we want to loop the menu. Choose Mark, Markers, Add Marker. The marker shows up as a fine hairline in the mini timeline. To edit the marker, we'll open the timing pane. Press function key F6 to reveal the timing pane. A small green marker is visible at the top of the timeline. Control-click or right-click on the marker and choose Edit Marker from the pop-up menu. Give the marker the name Loop Point and change the type from Standard to DVD Menu Loop and click OK. Choose File, Save, then Motion, Quit Motion to exit the application. Back in DVD Studio Pro, you'll experience a brief pause as DVD Studio Pro accepts the updates, and then you'll receive a message stating that the Motion Menu project has changed. Click OK to close the message window. DVD Studio Pro only checks for loop point markers when a motion file is first applied to the menu. Now that we've created the marker, we'll simply reapply the motion file. Drag motionmenu.motn into the Menu tab and choose Set Background from the drop palette. Double-click the Menu 1 tile in the graphical view and then click over to the General tab in the inspector. The loop point is now listed correctly as either 525 for NTSC or 521 for PAL. Notice too that the frame displayed in the Menu tab is the loop point frame rather than the black of the first frame in the Motion project. To the right of the loop point is the endpoint setting. This is where the menu will jump back to the loop point. It's currently set to a default value of 30 seconds. Since the motion menu we're using here is 1 minute in length, we need to change this. Drag select through the numeric entry box under the end thumbnail and type 10000 to update the endpoint. After a brief pause, the endpoint is set. You'll notice that the second menu option reads Freedom Fighter, Prize Fighter. This refers to the fact that Dave Rastovich is a professional free surfer, while Andy Irons is a professional competitive surfer. It's an unfortunate reality of design that clients won't always like everything you do. Let's assume that in this case, the client finds the phrase a little over the top and would prefer a more generic invented term, biographics. If we'd rendered the menu as a QuickTime file or MPEG stream, we'd now need to make the changes, re-render the file, and then re-import into DVD Studio Pro. However, because we're referencing a motion project, we can change the text quickly, and DVD Studio Pro will dynamically update to accommodate the change. In the Assets tab, click on motionmenu.motn to select it, then Control-click or right-click and choose Open in Editor, the same process we just used to add the loop marker. When Motion opens, select the Text tool at the top of the canvas, then select the text, Freedom Fighter, Prize Fighter. Type Biographics, then hit the Escape key to exit text entry mode. Choose File, Save, then Motion, Quit Motion. Back in DVD Studio Pro, the text dynamically updates. It's now time to assign buttons to the project. First, we need to add an image file containing the highlights we'll be using for the buttons. This image file is called an overlay, and in this case, it's a simple black and white bitmap with underlines for each line of text. In the Assets tab, double-click on overlay.tiff to preview it. Notice the 3 black lines corresponding to the underline areas of the 3 lines of text in the motion menu. This image was created very quickly by importing a still frame of the motion menu into an image editor, drawing black underlines under each line of text, then replacing the still frame with a pure white fill. DVD Studio Pro will use this information to create highlight states for our buttons. Click back to the Menu tab to view the main menu again. Drag overlay.tiff into the Menu tab, this time choosing Set Overlay. We'll now draw buttons onto the menu. Begin by dragging at the top left of View until you completely cover the entire line of text. Notice how the first of the underlines added by our overlay graphic automatically appears as you drag under the line of text. Release the mouse when the area you've dragged comfortably encompasses the entire line of text. If you make a mistake, just press Command-Z to undo. The bounding box created in the process represents the entire selectable button area when using a mouse to navigate the DVD. Repeat the process for the other 2 lines of text. Click into the bounding box of the first button, and then in the inspector, change its name to Trailer Button. Click the second button and rename it Bio Button. Finally, rename the third button Web Button. We now have 3 buttons in our menu, and it's time to connect them to our media assets. From the Assets tab, select Trailer.m2v and drag it over the View the Trailer button in the Menu tab. From the drop palette, choose Create Track, Connect to Track. This automatically creates a video track on the DVD, you'll see its tile appear in the graphical view, and links the button to the created track, all in one simple step. Notice in the Track tab that DVD Studio Pro has also identified the identically named AC3 audio file that matches the video. To keep the graphical view well organized, drag the trailer tile down and slightly to the right. Notice the bidirectional arrow that links the two tiles. This indicates that there are navigation links both to and from the trailer track. To cleanly center the tiles, press Shift-Z. Next, let's connect up the Bio video. Drag bioproject.m2v from the Assets tab to the Biographics button, and again, choose Create Track, Connect to Track. A second track tile is created. Reposition to the left of the trailer tile. If you look in the Track tab, you'll notice that DVD Studio Pro has not added audio to the track. That's because we rendered the soundtrack out of Soundtrack Pro in the previous tutorial under a slightly different name. We'll need to manually replace it. Drag Bio Soundtrack from the Assets tab into the Track tab and position it in the A1 audio track so that it correctly aligns with the video. We'll work on the third button a little later, but let's take a moment to test the DVD so far. Before you do, you'll notice we have one missing connection in the graphical view. There's no arrow linking the copyright tile to the main menu. If we were to leave things as they are, the DVD would not know to proceed to the main menu after displaying the slide. Double-click on the copyright slide. At the top of the inspector, click on the N-Jump pop-up menu and choose Menus, Menu 1, Menu. You'll now see an arrow pointing from the copyright tile to the menu tile. The arrow is only pointing in one direction since there's no way to access the copyright slide from the main menu, as you would expect. The slide will only be viewed when the DVD is first played. Let's preview the DVD using a virtual DVD player known as the simulator. At the top of the DVD Studio Pro interface, click on the Simulate button to launch the simulator. The simulator launches and holds the title slide for 10 seconds before proceeding to the main menu. Notice that there's no music bed for the menu. We'll need to correct that after we've finished our initial test. Click on the View the Trailer button. The trailer video will now play, returning to the menu upon completion. Next, try the Biographics link. Once you're satisfied, click the Close button in the top left corner of the simulator. Adding audio to the menu is a simple process. Double-click the menu tile in the graphical view. Then drag Menu Soundtrack.aif into the menu editor and choose Set Audio from the drop palette. We have one more link to create. This time, it's a link to a second menu with a web link. Let's build the menu first, then create the link. Control-click or right-click in the graphical view and choose Add Menu. In the inspector, rename the menu to Web Menu. Drag webmenu.motn into the Menu tab and choose Set Background. Drag weboverlay.tiff into the Menu tab and choose Set Overlay. Double-click on the Web Menu tile to load its parameters into the inspector. Click to the Menu tab and choose 16:9 letterbox as the display mode. We only need to create one button for this menu to return viewers to the main menu after they've viewed the website. Drag out a selection rectangle for the main menu button, just as you did for the buttons in the previous menu. In the inspector, rename the button Return. From the target pop-up menu, choose Menus, Menu 1, Menu. This button will now return viewers to the main menu. The actual web link is attached to the menu itself, so double-click once more on the Web Menu tile to load its parameters into the inspector. Click over to the Advanced tab and check the box next to DVD Access. DVD Access is a system enabling computers to access websites, email addresses, and even external files such as PDF documents from a software DVD player. In the case of a Macintosh computer, this occurs automatically through the default DVD player. On Windows machines, additional software must sometimes be installed. DVD Studio Pro will automatically create a folder on the DVD containing the installation files. In the DVD Access section of the inspector, type website link into the name field. In the URL field, type http://www.bluehorizonthemovie.com. Make sure the spelling is correct and you haven't added any spaces. This is the URL the DVD will launch in the computer's default web browser when this menu is accessed. The menu is almost complete. We won't add audio since this might be distracting as the viewer surfs the website. We now need to link this new web menu to the original main menu. In the graphical view, drag the web menu tile to the left of the Bio Project tile, then press Shift-Z to center and fit the tiles. Notice the arrow pointing back to the main menu, the result of the link we set for the Return button. Double-click on the Menu 1 tile, then in the Menu tab, click on the third button labeled Web Button. Using the target pop-up menu in the inspector, select Menus, Web Menu, Menu. The DVD is now completely set up. Before you preview it, however, you'll need to enable web access for the simulator. Choose DVD Studio Pro, Preferences. Click the Simulator section and check Enable DVD Access Web Links. Click OK to close the Preferences pane, then click the Simulator button at the top of the interface to test your DVD. You should now find all the links work correctly, and the web link launches your browser and directs you to www.bluehorizonthemovie.com. It's a good idea to test all the buttons on the simulator's interface to make sure they perform as you'd expect from a standard DVD remote. When you're satisfied with the performance of the simulator, it's time to test the DVD on an actual set-top player. To do this, you'll need to burn a DVD. Before burning the DVD, you'll want to set encoding parameters for any content not already rendered to MPEG or AC3. In our case, the two menu backgrounds are referenced motion projects, so they're yet to be rendered. Choose DVD Studio Pro, Preferences, and click over to the encoding section. First of all, be sure to check the 16:9 aspect ratio. For high-quality encoding of content, choose the 2-pass VBR mode. Note, this will significantly increase render times, but will improve the quality of the rendered MPEG stream. Since space is not an issue, set the encoding bitrate to 5.5 and the max bitrate to just above 7. This will increase quality without causing playback problems on lower-performing computers. For best quality, again at the expense of render time, set the motion estimation to best. Click OK to close the Preferences pane when you're finished. Finally, save the project. Burning a test DVD is simply a matter of clicking the Burn button at the top of the interface and inserting a blank DVD into your system's DVD drive. Note, compiling the DVD will take a significant amount of time, as DVD Studio Pro renders the files, builds the file structure of the DVD, and verifies that the DVD meets official DVD specifications. When the burn is complete, go ahead and test the DVD.